Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon, the last panel of the day. So we're between you, food and drinks, and I grew up in an Italian family, and I know that is not a good place to be, but we will keep it. We'll keep it on time. This session is titled "Policymaking in the Emerging Quantum-Enabled AI Landscape." Before I introduce our panelists, let me just do a brief statement to introduce the scope of this discussion today. So while artificial intelligence development has progressed rapidly in recent years, as we all know, it still faces limitations and hurdles to maximize computing power and algorithm optimization. Quantum-enabled AI systems have the power to unlock future advancements in these technologies, but it also comes with risk. And research into this new frontier is just beginning. The question today revolves around whether policy, and to what extent policy considerations, can play a key role in guiding this research, helping to mitigate risk while providing guidelines for emerging technology that also fosters innovation and strikes that balance. So we're going to explore some of these questions today with three folks who are in different organizations working on different aspects of this with key insights. To my immediate left is Florence Lewine, Policy Advisor, Department of Homeland Security, Office of Cyber, Infrastructure, Risk, and Resilience Policy. Thanks for joining us today, Florence. Oh, yes, good. We're in the right order. So to her left is Ryan McKenney, Director of Government Relations at Quantinuum.
Nailed it.
Almost not. And then at the end, last but not least, is Paul Stimers, Executive Director, Quantum Industry Coalition. So we'll try to leave a few minutes for some questions at the end of this. So I just have a few questions for our panel today to kick us off. So what do you all think are the greatest risks and opportunity areas that we need to focus on, and what should be done from a policy perspective? I know it's a very broad topic, but at least what are some of the key issues and risks that you think require some type of policy, at least consideration? Florence, I want to start with you.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So our office, I think a lot of people might not realize that the Department of Homeland Security has a key cyber mission. I work specifically on the emerging technology portfolio, leading our quantum effort, but that's really very closely tied in with our AI policy work. And, you know, we think about everything through the lens of its impact on Homeland Security and critical infrastructure in the United States specifically. So when we think about new and emerging technologies, we're always looking at the risks to critical infrastructure and how we can both develop, new technology and make sure that the United States is a place where emerging tech can innovate really effectively, where it's well supported and well fostered by the government, but also that it's being deployed safely. So with the rise of quantum technology, I'm looking at, how a lot of our work so far is focused on the cryptographic algorithms and the implementation of post-quantum cryptography and its impact on critical infrastructure. So somebody referenced a report we worked on a little bit ago, looking at which sectors are going to be impacted first by the switch to PQC. Moving forward, we really want to kind of partner with industry and organizations on the safe implementation of the cryptographic algorithms, but also looking at how quantum technology can kind of be utilized within the department and within our critical infrastructure stakeholders to really improve this security aspect. How can we not only, talk about the risks of quantum-enabled AI technology, but how can we utilize it to improve our security apparatus?
Ryan, you were telling me earlier about some of the work that Quantinuum is doing with AI, quantum-enabled AI systems. Can you talk a little bit about what you're running into? Where do you think you're hitting some barriers that, or they're really revealing the need for some policy?
Yeah, everyone, great to see you. Jim, thanks for having us. I think on the opportunity side, it's enormous. Our CEO yesterday during our roadmap said that AI is the best thing that's ever happened to quantum, and quantum is the best thing that ever happened to AI. It's great that they're both happening at the same time. I think a lot of our folks on the algorithm and software side are working on how to build interpretable, accountable AI that is also powered by quantum computers and powered by the hardware. And bringing those things together will bring, huge compute power to customers and hopefully find ways to deal with some of the issues that are why AI is scary to a lot of folks and why I think we have to build AI that is accountable and interpretable. So thinking about both increasing the compute power, increasing the size of the large language models that we're building, but also doing it in a way where we have better insight and better ability to know why did an algorithm make the decision it made, and what ability do we have on the back end to go in and audit it, whether that's to protect customer data, whether that's to make a disclosure to a government partner. These are all issues that are already major policy issues, as we see in the EU AI Act, as we saw in the executive order from President Biden last year about safe, secure, and trustworthy AI. And I think we're trying to figure out how to best capture the spirit and the power of quantum plus AI for both government partners and commercial partners, but do it in a way that reduces regulatory risk.
So, Paul, what's your perspective on this? And I know I always ask you to take two perspectives. Not only do you have the industry perspective, but you're also the legislative whisperer, given your work on the Hill. What's your perspective on this question?
Well, thanks, Jim, and thanks for the opportunity to participate. And I just first would want to take just a moment to recognize the passing of a true quantum pioneer this week, who really developed applications in photonics and cryogenics and entanglement. And of course, that's James Earl Jones, who worked with lightsabers and kryptonite, or carbonite rather. And just sensing Luke's presence was so pivotal to the
You had me
industry.
bowing my head in silence. That was.
That's where I get you.
I didn't hear.
That's
this
where I
news.
get you. No, thank you. I'll be here all week. So I think so. A couple of things come to mind. First of all, you're absolutely right that the sort of the intersection of quantum and AI is critically important, and what it does from a legislative perspective, one of the things that it brings about is it's very difficult. It becomes increasingly difficult, if not impossible, to check what the quantum AI system is spitting out as the answer. So auditability and transparency and things like that start to become functionally impossible. And so questions of how we check, what other systems we can use to check since we can't do it ourselves, how we can design bias out of the system to the extent possible, how we can detect bias if it has crept into the system, and how those decision models and practices and procedures are being applied to things that really matter, housing decisions, credit decisions, interaction with the criminal justice system, things like that. Those become questions that policymakers are really wrestling with right now, and are going to have to wrestle with much more as we go forward.
So Florence, I know you talk a little bit more about some of the work you're doing. I believe you have a framework or something that you're working on, that you're developing in this regard. And you mentioned in your previous remarks about wanting to work with the private sector. Can you talk a little bit about how you are or would like to work with groups like Quantinuum? I'll get it right, Ryan.
It's okay.
Go ahead, Florence.
Sure. So a lot of our work is trying to build off of the kind of mountains of work that we've been doing and really trying to lead the federal government on in the last few years with the AI regulatory framework. And I'd really like to use that model and kind of apply it to quantum specifically, and then quantum-enabled AI as well, to kind of, as we can expand upon the AI executive order, which was about the trust and safety of AI development. I would like to really apply that to quantum specifically, so that, rather than fearing quantum development or not having any sort of guidance from the federal perspective on how we can develop quantum technology safely, we'd really like to provide as much guidance as possible. I think, it's pretty well known that the US government was kind of behind on the AI wave. And I think, as much as possible, looking towards tomorrow's problems in emerging technology, I think that quantum is kind of at the forefront right now. And the more that we can do in advance of, a cryptographically relevant quantum computer being on the front page of the New York Times, the better. Tomorrow's problems are here today. And so I think everyone in this room knows it, but I think, advocating for that effectively to stakeholders and to our own federal leadership is really, really critical right now. And so I think to pivot, I think, that is why it is so important that we really take advantage of all of the industry stakeholders and expertise that is in this room and is at this conference. I would really like to partner and learn from you on which issues are most important, how the federal government can best advocate for you. I know that, the funding and the R&D is really where we're at right now with quantum-enabled AI, but looking at what are your problems for down the road that we can, advocate for effectively, that we can help to provide solutions for, that I can, bring up to our leadership, that they can discuss when they're visiting the Hill. So that I think that, there's often a huge disconnect between government and industry. And I think the more that we can collaborate on finding solutions, the better. So please come and find me. I would love to work with you and to kind of develop solutions in that way.
So just if I can ask you a follow-on question, how do you work within the department with those that may have the use cases, and what role are use cases actually playing in your assessment or consideration of risk?
So we're trying to think about ways that, the department can utilize this new technology. So I think, we talked a lot about quantum sensors and how it can be used for GPS systems at sea. I'm thinking about how can this be applied to the U.S. Coast Guard, who really relies upon this technology for tracking. Thinking about our U.S. border mission and how we could use quantum technology to enhance our facial recognition system. Of course, with all of these new technologies and thinking about ways that we can apply them internally, it's, thinking about huge considerations like ethical considerations, data privacy considerations, ways that we can develop this technology effectively internally before and advocate for them effectively. I'm really interested to hear what other avenues, new technology this conference goers are working on that might be applied to the U.S. Homeland Security mission, which is about the protection of critical infrastructure. So I think there are a lot of solutions out there. I'd love to learn about how these can be applied for the national security perspective.
Okay, great. So Ryan, I think Florence just asked for some help. How can you help? What do you think you can? How can you help inform her work?
I think one of the big themes that we've heard this entire conference, and especially if anyone was here Monday for the International Forum, is governments, both foreign and the United States government, saying, we don't care that you have a solution just because it's quantum. Just because you say the word quantum doesn't mean we want it. We want solutions because we have problems, whether those are problems of equipping the warfighter to prepare the United States military, whether there are problems across the US government and the many administrative agencies and the intelligence community. Those solutions have to be AI plus quantum plus supercompute. And so as industry, we have to do a better job of not just patting ourselves on the back because we have, 5 new qubits or we made a new logical qubit. Obviously, that's amazing. Obviously, that's pushing us down the road towards fault tolerance, but we have to find these hybrid solutions and do co-design work with the US government because that allows us, one, to get funding. It allows the US government to understand where the industry is at, to take advantage of use cases that are of interest to the US government and its missions, whether that's Homeland Security or otherwise. And 3, those regulations serve as that funding serves as soft law regulation at a point where we're not stifling innovation, but we are building cybersecurity, we're building things like auditability and interpretability into these mechanisms of funding that are helping companies get through the valley of death, where we have, going from a 3 to a 6 technology readiness level to a 6 to a 9 technology readiness level and commercialization. And the US government is also accomplishing its mission of building safe, trustworthy AI. And so not over-regulating, but making sure that funding is used as a measure of regulating and promoting better, more trustworthy AI that also helps solve problems alongside quantum computers.
Paul, do you have a perspective on that question as well?
I absolutely agree.
Or a joke,
I
either
think-
one.
Or a joke. I might spring another one on you. You never know. You won't see it coming. No, I think number one, we absolutely agree that the best thing that the government can do is be a customer and be a customer in a relevant way, both in terms of the soft regulatory approach, certainly appreciate that, but also in terms of sending that market signal, sending that demand signal that will then reverberate in the private markets and bring about significant extra leverage from non-taxpayer funding to complement what's being spent from the public coffers. I'm really pleased to say, Congress may or may not be able to keep the government open this week. In fact, they just pulled the CR off the House floor. I don't know if you all saw that. But one thing has been very impressive over the last year or so, and that is the amount of attention that's been paid to AI by Congress has been stunningly high. I mean, we've seen like 70 senators sit in a room all day long, not talking, listening to people talk about AI policy. This is before a major bad event, right? After a major bad event, sure, everybody does that. This is all happening before that has at least publicly occurred. So we're getting a lot of attention. We're getting a lot of careful thought. We're getting a lot of policy work that's being done at very senior levels, as well as on down through the staff, and that's encouraging. And I think that's something to. I haven't seen that in 20 years.
So that leads to my follow-on then, and it's not just for Congress, but anybody who's working in this space. Are we really talking about something new that needs to be done, or should we be looking at what's already being done around policy and legislation related to AI and expanding that to and quantum too?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing a National Quantum Initiative Act reauthorization, and that track is underway, and we're seeing AI stuff moving, and that's underway. I don't think we can expect a unified theory of quantum and AI to emerge from Congress, but I think there are plenty of places for synergy there. And the bottom line is, I think we're going to we're muddling through as best we can in an area of extremely rapid change, rapid development, and none of us knows how this is all going to turn out. But the most that we can do, I think, is enable the government to use these technologies to meet its respective missions as best as possible.
Before I ask each of you for an opportunity for some final remarks, let me just pause for a minute before we run out of time and ask if anybody has any questions or comments that you'd like to pose for the three of them. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, should I just use my command voice? Okay. Hi, I'm Lauren Williams with Defense One. This question is for Ms. Lewine. I was hoping if you could elaborate a bit more on some of the efforts that Homeland Security is looking at, particularly in the intersection of quantum and AI, like specific sort of experiments or pilots or initiatives that you're looking at in the next 6 to 18 months, if possible.
Don't want to disappoint you, but I don't think that I have anything able to share right now. I think everything is still very early in development, and I think that's we're at the kind of a forefront right now where the AI team is really looking towards the future of quantum-enabled AI. So we do hope to have more information for you soon, but I don't have anything at the moment.
And then as a kind of sort of related follow-up, how are you working, or are you working with the Defense Department and the interagency, the IC, on addressing these challenges and big questions around AI and quantum?
We do work with the National Security Council. I represent the Homeland Security at the NSC to ensure the development of new quantum policy. We work on IPC related to efforts around that. There are going to be more announcements soon from that policy council. But we'd really try to, I think there are two lanes of effort, both for the critical infrastructure perspective and then the national security systems perspective. National security systems really being led by our partners at DoD and NSA specifically. And we kind of work to support them as much as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Okay, for AI, already some explainable AI might be very extremely difficult, and but the quantum AI might be even more severe problem. You cannot look into what's going on in unitary process, right? So when you use a quantum AI to make a judgment on something, if something goes wrong, how would you who should take the responsibility, or who should, how can you ask the responsibility?
Well, I think that's a real pickle. I think that's a conversation that we're going to have as these technologies do come online, because and there are strategies, right? There are ways to validate things even when you can't validate any of the validators, right? That's sort of what a logical qubit is, right? In some ways. So figuring out those strategies is one thing, but then agreeing that those are okay is another thing, right? That's a political problem, and so we're going to have to have the engineering solution. We're going to have the policy blessing of that, and then we're going to have the political acceptance of that, and those are each different kinds of problems.
Anyone else? Okay, if not, Florence, final thoughts, final requests, final offers. What would you like to share with the group?
I think that, the Department of Homeland Security is really trying to be at the forefront of this emerging tech, looking towards, beyond risk with taking it into consideration, but looking at solutions as well and looking at ways to advance this technology in the United States specifically, making sure that here is a place that we can really kind of innovate and that this technology is well supported. I think looking towards the next 10 years and the advancements of quantum AI that are likely to come, we really would like to be the biggest advocates and supporters of your work, and make sure that we're developing it kind of hand in hand. So please let me know if there are ways that we can work together, both to kind of advance understanding of this technology through campaigns, through white papers, through research, to both advocate to our leadership as well as to a general audience or to a C-suite audience. We really want to make sure that this technology is better understood, supported, and developed here at home.
Great, thanks. Ryan, how about you? And if you can, ask you, we talked a lot about risk here, but in what way might this actually serve as a great accelerator for development of quantum?
Yeah, I think what this conference has showed in the last month is that it's an incredibly exciting time, both in quantum and AI. In the last month alone, we've had export controls drop on quantum computing. We've had DARPA and DOE announce hundreds of millions of dollars of programs with key metrics for industry to hit to drive commercialization. And we've seen NIST release the PQC standards. So these are huge signaling mechanisms from the US government that we are moving directionally towards protecting against future quantum threats, while also funding key commercial use cases and applicability across the US government in a way that promotes industry and government partnership. And so that's all extremely exciting for quantum. And then at this conference, almost every technical milestone that has been announced has been some mix of quantum plus high performance computing plus AI. And so last year, I don't feel like I heard that as much. I think every company is leaning in, trying to figure out ways to make quantum an accelerator of AI and AI an accelerator of quantum. And so obviously, as the question the gentleman just raised obviously shows, there are huge risks when you're creating higher, more powerful models that ingest more and more data. Issues of bias, algorithmic bias, and interpretability may become harder. Maybe there are other solutions, things like category theory. A lot of very smart algorithm developers are working to try to build better, more interpretable AI. But I think there are great regulatory frameworks already out there. I think the work that DHS and Florence are doing, that NIST has come out with in the last year since the executive order on AI, plus the EU AI Act, there are solid regulatory frameworks in place. And industry wants to succeed. No one in the quantum industry wants Shor's algorithm to be run by an adversary and for all of us to lose data. Sometimes when I'm on the Hill, there's this I feel like, oh, you make those machines that China's going to use and hack all of our data? Yes, but we also make machines that may, decrease the time a drug can be discovered, that may help with food shortages, may help with nitrogenase, all of these great use cases. And so I think just ending on a period of positivity that has come out of this conference, there was a great program about an Apollo program for quantum that Dr. Bob Souter led the other day. And his takeaway was, let's talk about quantum the way we talked about going to the moon, which when Kennedy first said, let's go to the moon, do all the other things by the end of the decade, not because they're easy, but because they're hard, the moon wasn't, that was a crazy promise. And quantum is a crazy promise, and it's going to be a decades-long thing. But when we talk about it with this high-mindedness and a willingness to work within regulatory frameworks while driving key commercial use cases that are good for humanity, we can really advance the ball. And I think this has been a great conference, and hopefully leads to more partnership.
Thank you, Ryan. So Paul, going to give you the last minute. Any final thoughts? And if you can, a minute ago, you were pretty positive about the degree of attention and energy on the Hill on AI. We're in an election year, new Congress. Do you expect that to continue? Do you expect there to be any speed bumps? What's your prognostication on that?
All of that in a minute. No, I do think we'll continue to see a lot of focus on AI and on quantum. I think there's a real recognition that it's vitally important to our economy and to our national security, and so that will continue. And I would say, just very brief commercial, if you are a U.S. company and you're interested in plugging right into this policy discussion, come visit me or see www.quantumindustrycoalition.com. But this is, I think, a real tremendous opportunity for the United States and for our partners around the world to come together to get this done. We do talk about the risks. It's worth talking about the risks, but the potential benefits are staggering, and that's truly exciting. So thank you very much for the opportunity this afternoon.
Great, thank you. Florence, Brian, Paul, thanks again for joining us on the panel today. Thank all of you for joining us for this discussion and for being at Quantum World Congress. This is the last session. Head over to the main building. Drinks and reception await. Thank you all.